Last summer on Oklahoma Gardening, we visited with you about horticulture therapy. That's a field of study that uses plants to help people with either mental or emotional handicaps. But one agency in Tulsa saw that show and decided to make their area more pleasant for their clients. Today we're at the Creative Care Center, which is a program of Tulsa Senior Services. Now, last year they just had a bare parking lot, and now they've made it a green oasis for their clients. And I'm with Linda Hare, the director of the Creative Care Center. Hi, Linda. Linda, you've made this just gorgeous.
Isn't this wonderful?
When I came out here early this spring just to first view the garden, it was just concrete and brick.
Right.
And it's really lovely. How did you approach the problem of making a facility for your clients?
Well, we're serving frail elderly, and many of ours are very confused. So we knew that they don't get to go outside very much because they're fearful of being outside. They don't walk well in grass either.
Right.
So we were wanting a place where they could come outdoors and enjoy the sun, maybe dig in the ground was our hope. And it would give us a new program experience as well as a place to come for peace and tranquility, right?
Well, did you have to think about are they all able to walk, or some of them in wheelchairs?
We have wheelchairs and we have walkers, so we knew we had to have wide aisles, we had to have a lot of open space, and it had to be easy to negotiate.
Sure.
And that's why we kept the asphalt, which is hot,
Oh, yes.
but we knew that it meant everybody could come out. And
Right.
so we did keep it, and you know, we're coping with it, I guess.
Well, obviously they're probably really enjoying the plants. Do some of them recall these plants from their own homes?
Yes, most of them did garden and don't get to do that anymore because they live with their children.
Sure.
And not many children have gardens anymore, so they get to give me lots of advice, walk around and explain to everyone what this is all about, and that brings a lot of old memories back.
Oh, I'm sure.
And reminiscing is a real therapeutic activity.
Sure. Well, what kind of activities do they do out here? I know they come and enjoy looking at the plants, but anything
Right,
else?
they do. And they pick the tomatoes,
Good.
whether they're ripe or not.
Uh-huh.
Sweeping is one of our big activities, and you will notice that we put the fence up off the ground primarily because we knew they couldn't get down with a dustpan, so
Okay.
they sweep the leaves out.
They sweep them out under the fence
Right,
then.
and we've got 8 brooms so that everybody knows, well, today's our day to sweep. And that's something everyone remembers how to sweep, and that
Right.
gets a lot of muscles
Sure.
being
It's
used.
physical activity.
Right. Do a lot of watering, and we don't really figure the watering they're doing is saving the plants because they use water cans because they can't handle the hose, it's too heavy.
Right.
So watering flowers is real important, and they begin to feel this is my flower, I planted this, I'm taking care of it.
Sure.
And that's a real good feeling.
Well, I noticed that you have a shaded area up here. Is that sort of a transition zone for
It
them?
really is, because when people come out, they're almost blinded by the sun.
Sure, this is the
And,
south-facing wall.
And it's hot,
Yeah.
right. And so we needed that space where they could come out and not feel blind by the sun. Also, we wanted a place where people who were real confused and afraid could sit and have the shade and not have lines on the ground. We had to work hard to come up with this. With your help, we came up with,
Sure.
you know, no trellis type
Right,
of
a
thing.
shade cloth that doesn't cast a pattern. You
And
men-
it's cool, too.
Right.
The air comes through. Of course, the rain does, too, but we're not out here in the rain.
Well, you mentioned some of your patients are confused. They have Alzheimer's
Many of
disease?
them have Alzheimer's. Some of them have dementia from stroke. Some are just very, very frail and very old and have, you know, some confusion just related to medications maybe.
So all of that had to be taken into consideration.
We really
in the
did.
planning.
Everything here we had to think through why, and we were fortunate that Jim Bowman at TJC helped us think that through.
Sure.
Yeah.
I know he developed the plan.
Right.
Well, it really is a lovely area. About how many clients can you work with out here at a time?
Well, we probably couldn't handle much more than 25. We
That's a big
want to
number.
work in small groups anyway out here. They don't hear well out here. Even though the traffic noise is minimal, when you're outdoors, your voice just dissipates. So we work and sit in small groups generally, or we sit in a big circle and sing and play games. But we don't count on them hearing everybody outdoors.
Right. Well, it sure is a lovely facility. I know you've had some wonderful donations to help
Yes.
make it all possible.
We really
We're very
have.
thankful for that.
Yes.
From this point, I'd like to talk with Frank Clifton. I understand
Great.
he actually helped you install the trees
That's
and figured
right.
out what would actually grow here.
That's right. He's been super, and we're so thrilled that he has a beautiful place he can claim too.
Well, good. Well, I'll go visit with
All
Frank
right,
then.
good.
Thank you. Well, Frank, I understand you had a fairly sterile area to begin with. How did you go about planning this whole thing?
Well, that's correct. It was pretty difficult conditions here, but fortunately, hardy varieties of trees were selected. But nonetheless, we had to treat this area as you would a much smaller container pot. We had to get rid of detrimental materials. There was a limestone base underneath asphalt. That had to be removed.
Oh, okay, so you had to break through the asphalt for these plantings to be successful.
Yes, and dig down quite a way to provide drainage for the excess water in the planters to get away too as well.
I see.
And then we backfilled it with a mixed soil with organic matter and slow release fertilizer as you would in a much smaller container.
Well, sure. So we talk a lot about planting things in containers now. You have to have special drainage because it's a different physical situation than in the actual soil.
Correct.
Right. Well, now in these beds here we have lots of different things planted, but the big trees are what amaze me. How did you get those in here?
Well, these had to be placed in here with a winch truck, and fortunately Linda thought ahead to leave the fence down so we could get in with the winch truck.
Good.
And for instance, this tree probably weighs about 1,800 pounds, so it was physically impossible to lift it up by hand and put it in there.
So if a person were planting this and wanted instant green, they've got to consider the fact that you've got to get a truck
We
in here
need
to
some
do that.
accessibility.
Right. Now, horticulturally, to keep large trees like these surviving through the summer, Linda mentioned that, told me earlier that they're watered every other day. Do they take any special feeding to survive in containers like this?
Well, you need to feed them more frequently than you would a tree out in nature because they're just not the organic matter falling down that you'd find in the woods, so they would need more frequent feeding.
Well, I know the species selection took some doing because you had a south-facing brick wall. Tell me a little bit about these two larger trees, why they were chosen.
Well, both of these trees are very hardy in Oklahoma. This is a lace bark elm, and it's found to do very well in Oklahoma. And it takes our heat and our wind, it takes drought, just about anything Oklahoma can dish out to it. This tree over here is a Marshall seedless ash, and it's another tree that's a fairly clean tree, but takes a lot of bad conditions, as well as some other varieties of seedless ash.
Well, that's good to know, because I know if any of y'all are planning a garden like this for older patients, you want to consider that you don't want a lot of trash coming down from the trees that they might slip on. So, well, these beds here are just beautiful. They're really filled out. I noticed they have even some tomato plants here on the end, and a lot of flowers filled in. The beds look like they're constructed of landscape timbers. Do you worry at all about soil coming out from between
Well,
those?
that is a problem that needs to be dealt with. We like the idea of the landscape timbers because they are wood and they do provide some insulation that ceramic man-made materials sometimes do not. So they provide insulation for the soil both from summer heat and winter cold. But there are little tiny cracks develop and soil can wash out. So a filter fabric was installed on the inside of the timber to allow moisture to come through it, but so the soil wouldn't be washing out on the concrete.
Now, is that like landscape fabric?
Yeah, there are a number of landscape fabrics. Sometimes they're put down in ground cover areas to prevent weeds from coming up and maybe mulch over them.
We mentioned the wood materials being a good insulator. That's something to consider if y'all are planning a container or raised bed garden, is that if you do use rock materials, they'll conduct the cold temperatures and you can have some freeze damage on your roots, so think about that. I guess they could put insulation in, couldn't they?
Yeah, sometimes other materials we line the container with styrofoam or something to prevent the quick freeze thaw.
Right. Well, this is just a beautiful area, Frank. You've done a great job.
Thank you so much.
Once you have your basic design laid out, the beds built, and the trees planted, you'll probably want to fill in with some smaller plants. Now down here we've selected strawberries to go in because that's something that the clients remember, they can enjoy the fruit, and it's fairly pest-free. It will also make a nice ground cover as it fills in under this ash tree. When you're working with older clients, you want to have plenty of furniture around that suits their needs. Notice they have some picnic furniture, some umbrellas. They also have a nice tool storage rack that has easy access to the brooms and other gardening aids, so when the clients come out here, they can get right to work. They also have tomatoes ready to pick. Now, when you're planning things like this for older clients, you don't want to have to spray, so keep that in mind also. Make sure you keep the plants watered and fertilized, keep them in tip-top shape so you don't have a lot of pest problems. Now, around the side here, they put some morning glories in, Also, a crepe myrtle in a container, which is a nice idea. Crepe myrtle is something that a lot of older clients would probably be familiar with, and it can also take the heat in a parking lot situation such as this. Back against this wall, to soften that tall brick wall, they've put in a trellis and grown morning glories on it, and that softens that harsh brick appearance. And then over across here, as a transition when the clients first come out, is a hedge of photinia, which will stay green all winter, and it breaks up the two different areas. Well, Linda, I noticed you also took my advice and planted some Boston ivy back here to soften up that wall.
That's right. That's going to add a lot, I think.
Once it fills in, it's really going to be beautiful.
It really is.
Well, I know you're enjoying this facility quite a bit, and this is, as I understand it, a daycare facility for the elderly, right?
Adult daycare, which means that folks have to care for their families at home at night and on the weekend, but we have them during the daytime while they continue to work, or they may have bad health themselves and need a little relief during the day.
Sure. Well, it's a wonderful facility. I know you're enjoying it.
Oh, we're just having a wonderful time. It's so good to be outside, and you know, there's a lot of stress relief being outdoors.
Well, sure, and being around plants. We all love them. Well, hopefully this will be a catalyst in your community to help you all get together and think about making a facility like this possible for your elderly citizens, whether it's at an adult daycare facility such as this, or maybe at a senior citizens community